Hello guys, welcome back. In today's video we are building the part that you don't see, the game server. The server is like a referee. It decides who plays against who, whose turn it is, and whether a move is allowed. By the end of this video, this server will connect two players, start a game for them, keep the board in sync, and end the game when someone wins or when it is a draw. Why this is important? Without the server, both phones would be guessing what's happening. The server makes sure both players see the same thing at the same time. So enough of me talking, let's start building our server. So let's make a directory first. We're gonna call server and let's cd to this server and install a few packages, right? So let's run this command, okay? And then we're gonna start a few packages. One of them is the express. So we're gonna stop that, and also we're gonna install node.js, which will allow us to keep our server running. When there is a change, we don't have to restart the server every time we make changes in our files, right? That's why we need this package right here. And also the important one, it's socket.io, which pretty much will allow us to have that real-time communication between that server and our front end, right? So let's add that. Once we add that, we can open this in our VS Code or your favorite code editor, right? So let's remove this. Let's do some configuration in this file. So let's first do our build here. We might not need this, but yeah, let's add that. So let's start and let's add this. This is usual when you have a build for production distribution, right? And let's add this will be the server, and this will be for our node mod, right? Which will keep track of our files, right? So, but we don't need all of these. Let's write this. We need this. Not test. Yes, this is what we need. So now let's create our folder structure, right? So I think that will be easier to start, right? So we can see where we can write our code, right? So let's start by creating a folder, and we're going to call it src, right? And we're going to create a file, call it server, right? And our server basically it's our starting point, right? It creates the server, turns on the socket.io, start listening for players, and basically all that code will be here, right? Let's create another folder. Let's go with let's call it socket. Basically, everything in this folder is about real-time communication, right? This is where the server will be listening for messages like a player connect or a player make a move, right? Everything will be here, right? So let's add another file here. We will call it index, and in this index folder we are gonna have the socket connection, right? And tells it whether the rule is it tells it where the rule lives, right, for the game. So basically that's the file. So, and then we will have another file. I don't know how we can call it, maybe handler. Yeah, handler sounds like a good name. And basically in this folder is where we react to player action, right? Like for example, joining a game, making a move, or restarting the game, right? So that's that. And now let's create another folder, and we are gonna call it game. Let's create a game, and in this folder basically it will hold the game rules, right? That's what we're gonna write here. And we're gonna create a few files here, logic, and basically in this file check who won and whether the game is a draw, right? Basically. And let's create another one. Let's room store, and basically this file keeps track of the active games, um, the players, and whose turn it is, right? And what else we need? I think that's it. Oh, since we're using TypeScript, we need another folder where we will include all the types, right? I'm gonna just call it types, and I'm gonna call this file called, let's call it rooms. All right, and here basically this folder defines, or this file defines the shape of our data, right? It helps us to avoid mistake by making sure everyone uses the same structure, right? And let's start by coding our data, or how our data will look, right? First, we're gonna export the type. We're gonna create a type or define a type, and we're gonna call it symbol, right? Now, symbol room. I don't. No, symbol room. No, I don't want to call it symbol. Let's just call it a symbol, and let's add two symbols, right? In our case, it will be an X or an O, right? So that's our first type, and then we're gonna define an interface, and we're gonna export that to and yeah, room. I think room is a good name. And so here we will need the players, right? And it will be an array, and it will be two string, right? Player 1 and player 2. And then we have a board. Basically, yes, we need a symbol, because the board can be in the board we are going to have data X or an O, right? And also initially it will be basically null, right? But we don't need this here. And then the current turn, right? And it will be a symbol, right? When the first players connect, it can be either X or an O, right? We will define that later. So that's basically how our room will look, and I think that's all we need here for now. So after that, let's start writing our logic, right? So what we need in our logic, let's create the first function, and we are going to export it because we are going to need this function in other places as well, and we're going to call it check winner, right? Yes, we need this. Now here is what happened, right? Now we need a symbol here. We are going to return the symbol, or let me import this first, or this function will return a symbol or a null, right? It's giving me an error because right now we need to return null or a symbol, right? Let's just return a null for now. So yeah, the error is gone. So basically this function look at the board and answer one simple question, right? And the question is, did someone win? All right, so if someone wins, this is the function that take care of that, right? So let's start by creating let's call let me write this and I'll explain it in a little bit, and maybe I can explain how we are determining the winner, right? So it will be a multi-dimensional array. Yes, we need this, we need, yes, and yes, we need all of this. Let me see, that's the first. This will be the top row, and this is all the possible ways of winning, right? First one is the top row, right? And this is the middle row, and this is the bottom row, right? And we have the left column. Let's try this. Probably you will see this better, or you will understand it better, I think. Let me add this comment here to explain why we have this line, right? So basically we will have, let's imagine we have our board here, right? 0, we have 0, 1 and 2, right? Just like this, right? So as you can see, this is our board, right? Let's imagine this is our board, and here are the possible ways of winning, right? This is our top row, right? As you can see, this is the first option, and of course we have to check if all of these are the same symbol, right? In X or in O, right? There's another way of winning, right? 3, 4, 5, which is right here, and this is another way of winning, which is down here, right? It's our bottom row. So now, what is another way of winning? is through a columns, right? So the left column is 0, 3, 6, which is right here, right? And the middle column it's 1, 4, and 7, right? It's right here. And then another one, it's a right column, 2, 5, A, which is right here. And then we have another way of winning, which is the diagonal, right? Basically, it's this one right here, which is 0, 4, and A, right? Which is right here. I mean here. And then we have the last one, which is this one right here. It's 2, 4, and 6, right? So basically, that's the way someone can win, right? So now, for each winning line, we will check if all the three spots had the same symbol, right? So we are gonna check if all. Let's say someone hit this uh, this this winning this winning opportunity, right? So basically, we are gonna check if this has an X, this has an X, and this has an X. So how we are gonna do that? We're gonna create a for loop, right? Let me write this for loop, and yeah, it's basically this. Basically this, right? So now what we are going to check here, uh, now we check if the board has the same symbol, right? X or in all three positions, right? We're going to check all of this, and it does have, if it does, that means we have a winner, right? Basically. And if there is no winner, we are going to return null, right? That's basically what this function will do. It's pretty simple, and I hope you understand it. If not, please let me know in the comment section. But basically, this is how our board will determine who wins the game. And let's create another function, and this function will determine if it is a draw, right? And we're going to import this, and I wanna call it something different. I'm gonna call it just draw, just like that. It's simple, but basically it's this, right? It will return a null, boolean. And let's make this simple. I think we can make this more simple by every, and we can use boolean. Yeah, that make it more simple. Alright guys, let's continue by writing the code for the room store, right? And basically this file is where the server keep track of the games and players, right? Think of it like the server's notebook, right? Since we are not using a database, we are gonna keep track of all active games through an object, right? So let's write these comms, and we're gonna name these rooms, and we're gonna utilize record, and we need to import the rooms, the types, and then we need a way to store one player, right, who is waiting for an opponent. In this case, I'm going to call it select waiting player, right? That's how I'm gonna call it, and it will be in a string or null value. Initially it will be a null, right? So now we need a function that just return the player who is currently waiting, right? So in this case, we need to export that, and we need to call it how we are gonna call it, get waiting player. I think that's a good name. Yeah. Why it's important now? I think that's, yes, that's great. That looks clean. And now we need another function, and this function basically will update who is waiting or clears it when a game has started, right? So we need another function. We're gonna call sport cons, and we're gonna call it set waiting player, just like that. And we are gonna pass, I think, that socket ID, which will be in a string or null value, right? And we are gonna update this variable, right, to the new waiting player. Let's say there is a match, and the match ended, and player A left, and then so we need to update that to the new player who is waiting, right? In this case will be the player B, the new player waiting, right, for an opponent, right? And right after that, we need to once there is a match, we need to create we need to create a room, right? So the player uh, can start the game, right? So basically we need a function. Let me export this, and we're gonna name it create room, just like this. And in the params, we're gonna pass player one, which will be a string, and we're gonna need the player two, which will also in a string. And we need to we need a few things, right? The first one will be in unique ID, and we're gonna call it room ID, and we are gonna use the room as prefix, and then we need the let's use the players, player one, and we're gonna use the player two, just like that. And then we also need the room stores, right? The room stores. So what we are going to store in the room, so we need to const room, we need the type, we will be room, and then here we need the players and the initial board, right? And the initial board will be 9 values with a null, right? And the current player will be X, right? Or the current turn will be X, right? But you can use an O2 as well. It depends how you want to structure the game. And then now we need to save that room so the server can find it later, right? So the way we are gonna save it, it's this way, right? Let me write a comment here. So not store but save the room, and then after that we just need to return the room, right? So the rest of the server can use it. So we're gonna return, and we're gonna return it as an object, right? We are gonna return the room ID, which is unique, and we are gonna return the room, right, which is this one. And also we need a way to find a room by its ID, so we need another function, and we're gonna call it, we're gonna export that too, and we're gonna call it get const get room, and we are gonna have as a parameter, we're gonna have the room ID, and it will be an string, right? And we are going to return, yes, the room ID. We're gonna look into the rooms, which we have stored them here, and we're gonna use the ID to return that specific room, right, that we are looking for. And if it is undefined, we are gonna return, and we are not gonna return anything, right, or null. And we need a way to reset the room or reset the game, right? And in that case, we are going to write a new function, and that function reset room, it's okay, and we need the as a parameter the room ID as well, and we need the room. We are gonna look through the rooms, right, that we have stored here, and we're gonna look for a specific ID, and we are going to see if there is no room. If there is no room, we're gonna return null, right? In otherwise, we are going to reset the board, so fill it with 9 null values, and then we are gonna set the current turn to X or O, whatever you prefer, and then we return the rooms, right? And basically that's the reset. Alright guys, let's continue with the socket file, right? Let's go with to the handler file, and basically every time the player opens the app, the server creates a connection and gives the player a unique ID, right? So let's write all that code here, and we're gonna create a new function. Let me write it and explain what this function will do. Basically, yes, we will need this, we will need the IO, but we need to import the type, right? The correct type, and the type will be from the socket, the IO. Yes, and we need the server here too. I mean, yeah, this is the server, and we need the socket here. I'm sorry. So socket from here too. let me import that too. Yeah, from there. And then over here we will gonna need a few things. Let me write this and then explain it to you what we are doing here. So cons waiting and equal to get waiting. So basically this is the function that we just wrote. Basically it will return the waiting player, so we'll need that there. And here basically we'll need an if statement, right? So we are gonna need an if statement, and we are gonna, let me write this first and then explain what we are doing here. So basically the server checks if someone is already waiting for the game, right? If no one is waiting for the game, basically this player becomes the waiting player, right? That's why we wrote this code over here, right? So nobody, let's say nobody's waiting, so we need to set the waiting player. Remember we wrote this function over here too, right? So now we are updating that to the waiting player, right? So now in the else statement, what we need a few things, right? Now both let's say both players are placed into the same private room, so messages can be sent to just those two players, right? That's what we are doing here. So but to do that we need first cons, we need the room ID, and we need the room, right? And we will need the room as well. So, and remember we have this function already, create a room, right? Basically, let me import that. So we create that already, right? Which is this one, right? Player one and player two. That's the params, right? That's what we are using over here, right? Basically the waiting player and the new player, right? Basically. So now that we have those two things coming from this function, we need to allow them to send messages to each other, right? Using this private room, right? So we need to use the socket or the server, and we need to, sorry, no 0 but O here, to waiting, and then we need the socket, that join, right? And it's the wrong ID, right? The room ID. And then we need the socket that join the ID, right? And basically, like I said, this now that both players are placed into the same private room, so the messages can be sent to just those two players, right? That's what we are doing here. So, and then right after that, within the same if statement, we are going to, let me write this code and then explain it to you. Waiting, and we need to emit, right? Basically this emit is an event, basically, and we need to send a start game, right? Basically, and then here we need to pass a few things, right? We need the room ID, we need the board, we need the board. Let me remove that, and now we need the board. We need to pass, we need to structure the room and the board, and we need the current turn, and we need that will come from here, right? And we need that's my symbol, right? In this case will be the player one symbol. We're gonna call it my symbol, and adds symbol. Let's just cast that, and we need to import this if I'm not mistaken. And yes, that solved the error. And we will need another just like this for the second player, right? Which will be socket.id, and then start game. Instead of an X will be an O, right? And that's basically what we need here, right? And finally, we need to clear the waiting player, right? Because the match is complete, right? We have two players and we need to clear, basically. Let's write a comment here just to make sure clear the waiting player, right? So what we are doing here, the server start the game and tell each player what they are, right? In this case, the server will tell player 1, so you are X, right? And also to the player 2, um, you are that symbol O, right? So that's what we are doing here basically. And after that, we need a few things, right? We need to create another event uh, to make the move, right? To determine whose turn, who is moving, the movement, right? So for that, we are gonna create an interface or define an interface and make a move. We are gonna call it here make move data. And basically there what we'll need is, let me remove this. We will need, it's the room ID, which will be in the string. We will need the index, not the position, but index. And the index will be a it will be a number, and we need the symbol of type symbol, right? And now let's try another event here, and we are gonna call the event. Okay, let me write this down, and we are going to make a move, and let's let me see, make a move. We're gonna destructure this data over here, right? And what we need from here is the room ID, the index, and the symbol, right? That's what we need over here. The error is because we need this, and we need all the data here, right? So now what we need to do here to make a move, first we need to get the room ID, right? Remember we wrote all that code. So what we need here is the room, right? And how we get the room? Yes, through the room ID. And if there's no room, we are gonna return null, right? Basically. Now, what we need to do here, it's to add some validate, right? We need to validate the move that the user is about to do or it's doing, right? So let's write that, validate the move, right? Basically. So let's write an if statement, and let me explain that let me write this, and then I will explain what we are doing here with this validation, basically. So board, and that board will take an index, and or will take a room, and basically that term is not equal to the symbol. All right, what it's happening in this validation, basically the server checks two things, right? Is the square already taken, which is here, and the other question is it actually your turn? And if either it's wrong, so the server rejects the move, right? That's basically what it's doing in this, right? It's rejecting a move if the square has been taken or it is not your turn, right? So that's what it's doing here. And then let me write this other code and explain it what it's doing, right? So board. So what we are doing here is basically if the move is valid, the server will update the board and switches to the other player turns, right? Basically this is a valid move here. So that's what it's doing here. So now next we need to determine who is the winner, or if it is a draw, right? For that we are gonna write this. We are gonna create this variable, and remember we have this function created already, right? We create this already, right? So this is how we are determining who is winning or who is not, right? And also if there is a draw, right? That's why we create those functions there. So in the logic game, right? So now how we determine if it is a draw? We use that function. That's it. And let me see. Yeah, basically if it is not a winner, what we need to, instead of this, we will use, if there is not a winner, we will use that function that we create, right? And we're gonna pass the room bar, and basically we need to import this. That's why we're getting the error. Did I import it? It's draw. Oh, I have it twice. It's a draw. Why it's giving me the error? Oh, I see why, because I already have this here basically, and now it's good to go. Now we need to use this to so basically let me write this and then I'll explain it what we are doing here. So first we are gonna write this. If it is winner or a draw, we're gonna send another event to the to our front end, right? We need to send emit another event with the message game over, and basically we are gonna send a few things, right, in these events, right? So the first thing that we will send in this event will be the board, right? Will be the board and the winner and a draw, right? Else we are gonna, if the game is still going on, the server sends send this state, right? Like probably I'm gonna call it game state. Basically we will send this state for both players so that both see that same board, right? If the game is not over yet, basically. And now we need to create another event that which basically will help us to determine not determine but will help us to reset the board, right? If the player decide to play against, right, again. So basically we need to create another socket, and we're gonna call this reset game basically. And we don't need all of this. Let me see, reset game, we will use the room ID, basically will be a stream, and then let me see, and we need something here, I think is this, yes. So here what we need here, the same thing, right? We need to find the room by its ID, and if there is no room we will return null, and then we need to find the players, right? Or we need the two players, right? And player 1 and player 2, we get that from the room, right? Because we have access to the players there basically. And now we need to emit another event which basically will start the game again, right? So basically we need to player, and we're gonna send another event which is game start basically. And within this we are going to we need to, let me add this so we don't have that error. So within this we need to send a room ID, we need to send the board, with a room, and we need to send the current turn and the symbol, right? And the same thing for the player 2 basically. And that's basically how we reset a game, right? We start a new game basically with a new board and the concurrent turns and everything. And then at the end, if a player leaves while waiting for a match, we remove them from the waiting spot so the next person can join, right? So basically we need to create another socket, and we're gonna call it disconnect. Yeah, that's perfect. And then let me write this here. So basically here we are going to check if the um, the waiting player is equal to the ID, then we're gonna set it to the waiting player to null, right? That's basically what we need here. And so this file is basically the server's rulebook, right? And traffic controller for multiple player, basically. And all right, guys, let's continue and let's go to the index. But before doing that, I just noticed that I need to rename this file. This is just a tx file. So let's rename that. And also one thing I forgot, it's the ts config, right? The ts config file. And I'm sorry, it is not ta, it's not ts, it's that JSON. And I do have one, I have some rules for that here. I'm just gonna copy and paste it, those rules. So yeah, sorry, I was missing the error there, and I was missing this file as well. So now let's continue here in the index file. So basically, let me write this first, what we need, and then I'll explain what this file is doing, right? So const setup socket, and setup sockets, and then I will, yeah, we need an arrow function there, and I'm gonna pass the IO. Let's pass this, and this is gonna be a type server, and this come from the, yes, from here, servers. Yep. Okay, let me, I think it's type here, I can remember. Yeah, I think it was just like that. And then what we need here, let me yes, we need that connection, and then we need this, yes, that's about right. And then we need the register, right? Register handler that comes from here. And basically this is what we just code, right? It's basically all of this. We need all this function, right? And now, so what this is doing, or what this file is doing, basically this file connects to the socket.io to our server logic, basically, right? Because it goes here and it goes to all our logic, right? So that's what this file doing. Think of it as the main switchboard, right, for real-time connection, basically. And here in this line of code, here we tell the server to listen for new players connecting to the app, right? That's what we are doing here. When someone connects, we pass that player to another file that knows how to handle the game logic, right? That's what we wrote here, right, basically. And here we have the create room, and we have get room by ID, reset the rooms and everything, right? That's the logic of our game, right? And so now let's go to the server, and in the server, what we are doing, let me basically creating the server, right? Let me write some code here, and I will explain what this file is doing, right? So const app, and we need the expressed, expressed, yes, we need that. And then we need const, we need a server here, we need http that creates app, right? Basically we need that. And we need the const io equal to new server, and we're gonna pass this server, and then here we need the corns, we're accepting everything, and that's basically what we are doing here, right? And this is giving me an error here. What is the problem? Corns server, and this server we need to import from, not from here, but from the socket.io. And this, yep, that should be fix that. And now we need to set up socket right in the IO. Basically this function is the one that we just created here, right? That's that. And then we basically let's try this server, the port number, and yes, that's basically what we are doing there, right? And let me add this localhost. I think I basically, and now let's see if everything worked correctly. We are gonna run this npm run dev. Let's see. And yes, now our server is running, and you can see it's running in localhost, right? And that's basically it, guys. Oh, let me explain a little bit about this and what we are doing here. Basically, this file starts a server and turns on the real-time communication, right? We import the tools needed to run the server and handle the real-time messages. And basically here we are creating this line. We are creating an app and then turning it into a server, right? That can receive any connections here. So and this basically what we are doing here, it adds real-time communication to our server, so phones can talk to each other immediately, right? And here we are basically plugging all the multiplayer logic we wrote earlier, right, in this piece of code over here. And finally, we start a server so player can connect to it, right? Basically over here, and basically that's where that's our server, and hopefully you understand it, how our game is working in the backend. And please give it a like, share, and subscribe. That helps me a lot